It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers, and this week is the beginning of March, and it's a doozy. And it's not Mercury retrograde's fault. Actually, Mercury retrograde is actually helping us out. And in fact, it helped out me and my editor, Jessica, for the Awake Space magazine, because we were so worried about Mercury retrograde. We worked at a pace where everything except like 2 articles is edited. And the magazine always comes out, by the 5th, 6th of the month. But the horoscopes and the what's in the headlines predictions are up and edited in your sneak peeks of the magazine if you're a subscriber. So you can head over to the Patreon. Every year I do the year ahead predictions, and I've added in preparation and the big ideas. And I'll read you the big idea for March. This episode, March is changing tides. It's the cosmic tides are shifting. And I know we've started things out looking pretty gnarly, but it's leading hopefully to better days. She laughs. She laughs. For those of you who've asked how myself and my family are doing, we have a lot of loved ones in the Middle East, specifically Bahrain. Everybody we know and love is okay. It's different for everybody in how they process. I'm putting my own work to stay focused and to be of service. But yeah, everybody we know and love is okay. Everybody directly related to me is stateside right now. So, and in some ways that's a good thing, I know. But thank you. Thank you for checking in, because, it is always heartbreaking when war breaks out. And I know it's your first time for a lot of you, or your first time really being aware of it. For many people, it's not. It's funny, I got to Bahrain in 1991, right after the first Gulf War, like literally like a month and a half after it ended. And things don't just end, there was a lot of environmental pollutions, and yeah, it's a beautiful culture, and they're very kind people in Bahrain. It's a very educated society, and yeah. So anyway, thank you very much for checking in. And if you have loved ones, and we have an international listenership, so to all of you who may be impacted, my heart and my prayers go out to you. I'm going to talk a little more about my predictions here. Now, what's in the headlines goes out specifically to members of the Awake Space community. They go out, but I am going to talk a little bit about what's coming up this week. I put up a post that's open to the public with the first of 3 slides for March of 2026 that I wrote in 2025. And when you're an astrologer, because I think people confuse being an astrologer and a medium, and medium, Matilda and I work together, that we operate differently. It's not that my intuition doesn't come into play. A lot of times that's where I'll get a thought and I'll go pull charts. But astrology is very, very different. We get the what and the when, but we don't get the who and the how. Mediums can get the who and the how. I have to specifically go look at charts. So when you're like, tell me about this politician, tell me about that politician, I'm like, I have to go pull those charts. And a lot of them don't have birth times, so I can't give an accurate assessment. Okay. There is a particular person I know who my listenership is waiting for certain publications to come out for, and he does have a birth time. And if you're in the magazine tier and up, I've been talking about what may be coming for that person. It is not a good month for them. So get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your H2O. And whether we are going to the gym and you're helping me get in shape, or we're folding the laundry, cooking the food, fasting, and looking for iftar and that beautiful time you spend with family, or taking the kids to school, walking the dog, putting the cat in the backpack, I love those cat backpacks. Whatever you're doing, we're going to do it together. And stop doom scrolling. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. Okay, I'm not going to lie. March is crazy sauce. But in some good ways, it can be really magical too. So one of the things I've known since I was a child, where, again, lots of ugly things were happening that people didn't seem to know about. Isn't that always the case? And yet the magic in my life was so strong, so strong. There were so many things that seemed unbelievable, and I didn't talk about them, whether it was clairvoyance, clairaudience. And by the way, I've been tested. I have 0 clinical markers. That's why I feel free talking about it. I'm like, nope, no, we know I'm not crazy. The times in my life that were most dire, most serious, most life and death were the most magical times. Because isn't that when we need magic? But I was open to it. I had hope. And that's what you need to cultivate. If you just look at the world is fucked, it's shit, it's going to shit, it's never going to be anything more than shit, that's exactly what you're going to see, because our perception shape reality. I had a very long portion of my early life that just didn't ever seem like it was going to change. And every single day, I'd wake up and say, it's got to be better than this. Someday I'm going to be a grown-up. And when I'm a grown-up, I will be in charge of me. And I've held to that. Anybody who's ever tried to control me has, no, I'm grown. You don't get to do that. And there's a reason for that. Because that was my mindset even as a child. Like, I can't do anything about the bad stuff right now, but I will later. I'll be able to be in charge of myself. And I think it's not so much a mindset issue as learning to understand that if you can look forward to things. For me, it was being a grown-up with car keys and a job, my own money. Everybody has their own thing. So before we go forward and we talk about what's happening in March, understand your individual experience can be very different. And of course, we have that lunar eclipse, the full moon on steroids, on March 4th. And we're going to talk about what that means for you, not just what I see in the outer world, because the mundane energy does not have agency in the same way as you do. You have so much more power than you can ever imagine. That is why the people who believe in dominance and control do so much to generate outrage, do so much to generate fear, pain, suffering, oppression. Because if they didn't, they could not hold on to control. They're either not smart enough or not strong enough to lead effectively and efficiently. And that goes for anywhere. If you have to subdue someone else, you are weak. Period. And the only way you can truly combat that isn't so much as dishing back the same, but is just knowing in your heart of hearts, knowing in your mind, aligning the two, and taking the action you are capable of taking in the moment. And if you're doing the work in Laurie's test lab, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody asked about that, how they can get access. I want you to hold on. I'll have a way for you to access that soon. In about a month or so, I'll make an announcement. The work that everybody says, oh, you need to do the work. I remember being involved in different communities in my 20s and 30s, and somebody would be reactive and you'd hear these snarky comments. And this was spiritual communities. And I'd be like, well, they're not doing the work. What is the work? I would ask. And they'd give, these poetic answers, or dive into your shadow. But they never gave instructions. And by the way, don't dive into your shadow. Your shadow can't exist without light. Okay? Period. The reason why this side of my face is shadowed is there's a light streaming and this part of my nose is blocking it. But if I turn to the light, there's no shadow. Doesn't mean we don't take accountability for ourselves, our actions, that we are accountable for our victories and our celebrations. But a shadow is not the full part of you. It is parts of you you may not want to acknowledge, but you can get lost. Because without light, it isn't a shadow, it is an abyss, and it is easy to get lost in that darkness. The greater the light, the greater the shadow. Let's talk about March of 2026. Like I said, I put up a post with the end slide, because there's 3 slides per month for most of the year until we get to the late fall. And I write these in May and June of the previous year, every single year, because at the solstice in June, I always do my predictions and preparation for the next year, but to prove accuracy. And remember, I don't see the who, I don't see the how, I see the what, the where, and the when. Let's take a look. So for March, the big idea, master timing. Master timing. It's really good. We have Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And you can check out the Mercury retrograde survival guide up on YouTube. I'll remember to put the link here in the show notes. We're talking about well-timed action outperforms force. Well-timed action outperforms force. And I wrote this last year. Isn't it interesting? There is a massive use of force out in the world. I think we're going to see some things come out. There's a lot of leaks. There's a lot of disclosure of information this month. So we'll see how it goes down. Let clarity determine movement. Let clarity determine movement. So instead of running around like a chicken with your head cut off or throwing darts at the board with your eyes closed, right? Take time to slow down. Get clear. What's my next step? Not what's my end game. What's my next step? Practice waiting without self-doubt. Sometimes we have to hold. So from December till about mid-February, I had no energy. I was just really low energy. I ended up getting sick in January. We now know I was poisoning myself with an air freshener, but it was deeper than that. That was part of it. We had a physical component. Remember, mundane over magic. But there was other stuff. And every time I would tune to guidance, I'd be like, hey, I have things I need to do. I have a lot to do. You've landed me flat on my back. Come on. And I'd get this thought in my head, just rest. And I'd be like, okay, just rest. And even though things slowed down and I was busy doing a million other things, I like to build my own websites because I'm good at it and I like it. And I like video games too. So building a website for my business is a little bit like playing a video game. I ran into tech changes. And so there was some aspects of it that I didn't get, and I've got somebody to come in and help. And so we're still doing that, but I knew we'd be busy in March. It started to not in January. In January, I was just sick, and I didn't know anything except I was sick. I slept a lot. But by February, I was like, no, I'm going to be busy. I start looking at charts, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be really busy. And of course, end of February with that Mars square Uranus action that I knew was going to involve Iran and the GCC states. If you guys listen to the clips that get put up on YouTube, by the way, that's not the whole of that 2.5 day period. Those are just little clips of it. I've had the GCC states, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Saudi. I'm trying to think. I don't think I forgot anybody in that. Because I've looked at their charts because I knew something was brewing with Iran. They all have some prominent Taurus placements, to be fair. When you're waiting, and that can include impacting your income, right? I wasn't reading, I wasn't teaching, but I had trust, and I did not feel a panic. My brain might have worked overtime a couple of times, but I didn't feel the visceral sense of, oh my God. And so that's what I'm going to suggest. You can wait, tune into your guidance, tune into your higher self. I'm not saying sit and don't do anything, but there might be things that you have to wait for. So maybe you wanted to travel and all the air traffic is screwed up right now. Maybe you wanted to go on vacation to Dubai. Well, you're going to have to wait. Don't freak out about it. This is not going to continue for years. This will probably be resolved by April. And I know that because I predicted it. I was like, things stabilize in the GCC countries. I was like, wow, damn. So, and then the last thing for your big idea for March is commit only when alignment is present. So don't just do it because you feel obligated or you should do it. Should is a terrible word. Shoulding is messy. Make sure it's aligned. You have clarity. It's the next logical step. But I wouldn't overcommit this month. There's a lot going on in March. March 2nd, Mars moves into Pisces. Today is March 1st, Sunday. So, as you're listening to this, there's going to be some big bada booms. If you're in the magazine tier and up, I did a deep dive, and for the moon, for the full moon and the eclipse and how to use the energy, and then I kind of went through the March energy, and holy shnikey, I laughed for 10 minutes almost hysterically. And A, it's a nervous tick. B, it's transmutation of energy, and it usually involves sadness or pain. There's a big event Monday in the early morning. And so I think it's probably on the East Coast of the United States. It could be overseas as well. But there's a big event. It also impacts the Oompa Loompa very physically. No, I don't think it's it, but it's not great. So it could be physical, it could be political, it could be a leak of information. We'll find out. It's pretty big. March 3rd and 4th, depending on where you live in the world, we have the Virgo full moon, which is also a total lunar eclipse in certain areas. Okay, in certain areas of the world, and it's total in a narrow strip, but it's visible as an eclipse, not a total, as an eclipse in a pretty wide berth. So it's very interesting on how that visibility works. And I'll put up a picture and write an article for our community in the awake space. That it's a big one. It's about restructuring. It's about the systems that are going on in the world are restructuring. And there may be restructuring in your own life, but it might be really good. I can think of a million times when something ended or something didn't happen that I wanted to happen that ended up being for the best. Not just making excuses for it, but it, like, literally looking back, I'm like, oh man, I dodged a bullet. Oh man, that ended up being a good thing. It was very disappointing at the time. But if we pin all of our hopes to outcomes, we are almost always going to be disappointed in some way. Happiness is an inside job. You can be happy no matter what. I've met people who literally had nothing, who were content in life. They weren't resolved. This is my lot in life. They were some of the wisest, kindest people I've ever known. It wasn't about having a big house or the right car or the dream job. In fact, I'm writing about that in the magazine, in the What's in a Chart article, talking about the social programming attached to the dream job. What's the dream job? You have one life and one body. Dream job? More like aligned into who you are, because I think a lot of times it's the respect and the money and what have you. You can get that in a lot of ways, but having your hopes pinned on a certain outcome is why so many people wring their hands and say, "Oh me, oh my, why?" Life has never been safe. There has never been a time of absolute peace. There are often times of ignorance of what's going on in the world. We just happen to have a lot more information now. So please don't pin your hopes to outcomes. However, I believe things resolve in the Persian Gulf by the end of April. So we've got the Venus sextile Uranus, the Sun trine Jupiter. Venus moves into Aries on the 6th. We've got Sun Mercury Cazimi on the 7th with Venus conjunct Neptune. Expect some good music. And expect some spicy things from women. Women are going to be rising up. They have been. So we're going to see more and more things happen with women. Venus is going to conjunct with Saturn. That's going to be a female leader of some kind making a big, bold move. And then Jupiter goes direct in Cancer on the 10th. I know a lot of people are like, oh, thank God, Jupiter's going to go direct. Remember, Jupiter is magnification and more and more is more is more. It's not about good luck. If you're naturally lucky, Jupiter will magnify that. If you're naturally hosed, the song from Hee Ha, if I had no bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. If that's your mindset, it expands that too. So, and it just is a magnifying lens. I don't see it as good or bad, but it's a lot. So that'll be interesting. And then we have Venus squared Jupiter, Sun sextile Uranus. Mercury is conjunct Mars on the Ides of March 15th. At 2, Brute. I think there's going to be some really big stuff come up. Of course, we have the spring equinox when the sun ingresses into Aries on March 20th and Mercury stations direct on the same day. That should be significant. It usually is. But anyway, if you want to see the rest of the astrology for March, you can head over to the Awake Space community. That's at patreon.com/the Awake Space. You will see the ephemeris, which means, the astrology itself, what's going on through March, the big dates. There's more than that, but these are the big dates. And then my slides for the end of February and the beginning of March. And here, speaking of, I'll give you a little hint. March kicks off with a bang. Remember, I wrote this in June of 2025. March kicks off with a bang. Could see big fires, incendiary devices, arson, and big fires in the southern hemisphere. Those big fires could be because of bombs. Arson, like intentional fire setting. Seismic activity increases from late February into mid-March. Global Southern Hemisphere and West Pacific is most affected. Before you freak out, West Pacific is the Asia Pacific region. The West Coast of the United States is the Eastern Pacific. I know. I don't make up the rules. I just communicate it. March 1st is an extremely volatile day with global conflict escalating. Is global. First week of March sees extreme weather, big erosion events, which include land and rock slides, glacier melt, avalanches, sinkholes, and bluff erosion. Big issues, big issues with oil production, oil fields, pipelines, platforms, and that includes liquid natural gas. Issues with all ocean-going vessels. Could see accidents and ships run aground. So I saw problems with shipping. Problems, and that, all ocean-going vessels. That's cargo ships, cruise ships, navies, etc. March 7th sees a storm of significance in Asia, most likely. March 8th, we could see seismic or volcanic activity of significance. Conflict between China and the Philippines on there, but it could be Taiwan. But China and the Philippines have been having some territorial disputes as well. So we'll see what's up. There's stuff up. So that's just the first slide. If you are a subscriber of the magazine and have been since before, forever, right? From when it started up until December of 2025, I'll be releasing the year ahead to you. If you're not, and you are an annual subscriber and you joined in January, February, I will release it to you. If you join as an annual subscriber, as a new patron, you'll get this. And that's at either the $15 or $33 level. $33 level has had access to it, I believe, since, if not January, it was December. I don't remember. So you could go into the Patreon shop in the Awake Space and stream it It's available there. So, and hold on. We'll see what happens at the end of the month or in April. And I'll be putting out like the date for the June event. Got to start writing those 2027 predictions. Yay! So there's a lot going on in March. I had the GCC states, again, that's Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Emirates, Oman, and Saudi in the February slides. And that's up in that post. You can see that. And I had them under strain. So they were dealing with some kind of intensity. And I think it's both domestic as well as international with the conflict with Iran. Because as we speak, an official war has not been declared, but there are warlike actions, which was in my What's in the Headlines predictions, warlike actions. And why are some people saying it's not a war? Let me explain that as an international relations specialist, not a astrologer. Because wars have to be declared in a legal way. There's actually laws that specifically govern war. And so in the United States, it has to be approved by Congress to be a war. Otherwise, it's a police action, or it's, they talked about it being preemptive strikes. That's because the president can do that, even though, it's been used a couple of times by a couple of presidents. It's usually a way to get around Congress. The thing is, even if Congress put forth the War Powers Act, they don't have enough of a majority to make it veto proof. So we'll see what happens. But maybe information comes out tomorrow or today as you're listening. Maybe information comes out on Monday that changes that game. We don't know. Right? I don't get how it happens. There is a lot of whistleblowing this month. There is a lot of leaked information. I don't think it's Epstein files. It could be related to the Epstein files. A foreign government to the United States may have an intervention, and I don't think it's necessarily a military intervention. I think they could leak information. Europe needs to be aware of instability as well. Keep your eye on Turkey as well. Not that I think Turkey is going to do anything, but Turkey is starting to be positioned as a problem by certain countries. And Turkey is a member of NATO. And of course, we've been having issues there. I think Europe holds, but I think it could see some instability. So if you're in Europe, I have a lot of European listeners, hold tight. Also watch the weather. Everybody watch the weather, because it's going to be incredibly wet globally. We could see flooding at historic levels, either due to monsoon rains, like atmospheric rivers. We could see a lot of erosion events. We could also see some really big ocean waves, like huge. Will they reach shore? Don't know, but we could hear reports of that. We could hear about, typhoons, monsoons. We might even hear about a hurricane, maybe, especially after Jupiter stations direct. We got really lucky with the last hurricane season with Jupiter retrograde during that. Jupiter's not going to be retrograde during hurricane season this year. And since it is in Cancer for a while, because it moves into Leo this year as well. Once it moves into Leo, I think we're looking more at expansive forest fires, bushfires, things like that, again, globally. So you always want to be prepared. Okay, you always want to be prepared, and just because it's happening in one place doesn't mean it's happening everywhere all at the same time. When I was in high school, I was an overachiever, go figure. And this was my senior year. So I was in fourth year French and AP English. And I decided, because we were assigned A Simple Heart by Gustave Flaubert in the AP class, I decided to read it in French as well. I did in English and French. And at 17, I was so disgusted by Flaubert's description of one of the main characters, Félicité. Félicité. Because he was painting her as dumb as rocks. Okay. And what I remember, I don't remember 90% of the story, but what I really remember is him saying Felicity was so simple, meaning stupid, that she believed if it was raining in Paris, it was raining everywhere. And I remember going to my French teacher and saying, I really don't like Flaubert. I think Flaubert is a misogynist pig, and nobody's that dumb. Like, who would be that dumb? I'm now 56. I'll be 57. And I've worked with the public. He was right. He was right. There are people who believe that. But you're not one of them because you're one of my listeners. You don't believe if something's happening one place that it's happening everywhere, right? Right? So, if you live in a major city, here is my advice for Monday. Don't go to big crowded spaces. Don't be around infrastructure. I don't mean your building. I mean important infrastructure, because we could see some false flags. Okay. We could see, they're going to blame it on terrorism. Watch everything with skepticism. Do not let yourself get caught up in blind nationalism or patriotism anywhere you live. Use critical thinking. Question everything, but not in a crazy way, but just like, is that really true? Is that all the information? Why is there all the news stations saying the same thing? Why is there no divergence of opinion on this? Why are people jumping to conclusions instead of presenting evidence? It'll save you a lot of headaches if you can do that. Okay. So March is wild. March is wild. We start to see some real, like on a personal level, you can really build forward this month too. Mars and Pisces, like it gets a lot, like Pisces in general gets a lot of shit, but Mars and Pisces is the force of the ocean. Okay. I don't understand why other astrologers don't seem to get that. You have the ocean. Maybe it's because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and my grandfather was a commercial fisherman, and I literally grew up with, don't take your boat out on the equinox. The sea is a cruel mistress. Every year I'm like, I'm not taking my boat out, Grandpa. I don't have a boat, but if I did, I still wouldn't take it out. He's been dead for a long time. Oh, God. Oh, by the way, do you like my new earrings? Aren't those cute? That's a little cowboy on the moon. But anyway, I digress. I have a matching t-shirt too. And you'll see it in the Astrologers Roundtable. I'm going to put a clip of the Astrologers Roundtable in, which is exciting. We got together. Oh my God. It was the woke astrology crew was down. We were down. Help, I'm falling and I can't get up. Both Susie and I were not only, we were dealing with health problems of our own. Susie had some family stuff. I was head down in my projects as well. I've got these beautiful projects. One is healing the money wound. I've translated the astrology into plain English so that the method is what's focused on versus the astrology, because people were getting lost in the weeds on that. For those of you interested in astrology, I'll talk about something else that's coming up this month in March. But anyway, so Susie and I were like flatlined. And then Shelby had some stuff. Damien seems to be fairly unscathed. He was off being creative. He had a little stuff. But it was just like one thing after another. So we're back up and running. And I know you guys have been waiting for an Astrologers Roundtable. And this one, we're talking about what happens in a reading. And what can you expect from a consultation? And why is it different than a lot of readings? Because I had no idea until people told me, and these were clients. Sometimes they were members of the Awake Space community. But they would say, hey, there's somebody charging like $500 just to read out your placements. I'm like, what? And there's a reason I don't call it a reading. I call it a consultation. Because think of like coaching. Astrologers have always been counsel, not counselors as in psychologists, but counsel, advisor. Okay. And I'm very convinced the current Oompa Loompa in charge has one. Because I don't think he could have navigated the last 4 or 5 years without that, including when he changes locations. I was running some charts last night, and I was like, there's no way this man does not have an astrologer, But anyways, we've got the woke astrology crew back up and running. I think it's a beautiful conversation as always, very thoughtful, very ethical, very mindful, very demure astrologers who all have availability. I do too, but it's going out to clients. I know I still haven't sent the email out. I'm sorry. I'm doing it. I know you want a reading. I'm sorry. It's coming. They are not chopped liver. That's why we do the round table. I want you to hear them, see them, understand. They wouldn't be with me if they were not really good. So there's that. God. Oh, I think I'm going to take a break and then I'll come back. We'll do some community news for the Awake Space. I'm going to change it up. We've done patron shout outs about the same way for like the last 5 years. And I was like, what can I do to change that up? So I'm going to give a little like calendar of the month in this one. Still going to give high praise and welcome to our newest patrons. I want to give the calendar of events that Laurie's doing. I'm going to put one out on Patreon. I have to be really careful. The minute I put it in writing, all hell breaks loose. All hell breaks loose. It's because my South Node is in Virgo and Pluto is conjuncted. And it's like, you don't get to be super organized and anally retentive in this lifetime. You should have seen me when I was young. I had a stick up my butt. I have lightened up a lot. I have the North Node in Pisces, and I'm supposed to not be as rigid in this lifetime. It took a lot of learning to be there mostly. I'm going to say inside of me is a very frustrated drill sergeant who is anally retentive. It's like, did you just do that typo? What the hell? It's like, oh my God. And then after the community news segment, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Uranus and some of the stuff I've been hearing online, which is making me question people, like that Mars-Uranus conjunction coming up in July in Gemini. So I don't understand why some astrologers have been saying there hasn't been an exact conjunction, because it's impossible for Mars to not have an exact conjunction with Uranus. I don't quite understand where they're coming from with that. That math doesn't math. But I've seen a few videos, more than one, by different people. And I've gone, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. But anyway, so we'll talk about that after we do the community news segment. The Awake Space Community News coming up with the calendar of events. And thank you to our newest members of the community, because without the members of the Awake Space community, there is no podcast. We do not take ads. We do not take corporate sponsorships. I might take sponsorship, but I won't take like big company. Like if you've got a small business, we could talk. Okay. Apparel, jewelry. I buy that stuff. I have a really cool boutique. Is this not cute? Just wait till you see the t-shirt on the round table. But anyway, I love the boutique I go to. She's happy I go there. But I would take sponsorships for cool jewelry. I would. Not that I like it or anything. I need to get my nails done tomorrow. Monday the 2nd is nail day. And I've thrown a few nails. You know how it happened. I love this. This is handmade. But anyway, I'm a sucker for it, I tell you. But anyway, let's get going with the next segment. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. We've got a lot going on in March. March 14th, I am teaching your natural path to income. Your natural path to income. Everybody who attends this 3-hour workshop gets a copy of Finding Your Side Gig Using Astrology. It's a 192-page workbook that helps you work through and plan alternative sources of income, but it would also work for aligning into a job or a career. It's about where the money comes from, because in the astrology chart, it isn't about finding a dream job or a career. Robert Hand did a wonderful workshop like over like 12 years ago called Vocational Astrology, and he was in Seattle for that. And I of course went because he hadn't been in the country for a long time. And I was like, oh, I gotta take that workshop, because I honestly didn't care what he was teaching. It's like Robert Hand, right? Dumbledore of astrology, so amazing. And anyway, he talked about occupation or vocation. So what you're doing day to day, 6th house, and your avocation or your calling being the 10th house. And I really agree. I think when people are like, well, day job, 6th house, career, 10th house. A calling and a career aren't the same thing. And he rightly pointed out that the ancients didn't have a concept of career, and they didn't. You had callings, or you had a destiny, meaning if your family were blacksmiths, it was rare for you not to be one. If you were farmers, you were going to be a farmer. If you were from a family that was known for religion or politics, that was your fate. And we still see people doing that today who are stuck with rigid social programming, right? Because remember, there's multiple layers of consciousness, and deliberate is making a deliberate choice for yourself. It isn't better or worse. You can be pissed off and deliberately think, no, I really am going to hit him. I'm going to hit him. I'm not going to hit him. I'm going to hit him. That's a deliberate choice as well. So it's not about a moral high ground or spiritually more aligned. We can spiritually align into negative shit too, because spirit is multifaceted, right? So, but anyway, when you're looking at your day job and your calling, and this was my favorite example for years and years, and I ended up having a client be that example after using my metaphor for, oh my God, maybe like 25 years. The person finally came in for a reading. But you can be a school janitor as your day job, which there's nothing wrong with. We need school janitors, or everybody, guess what happens when they throw up in the hallway, right? Or guess what happens when surfaces aren't cleaned? We get sick, right? It's an important job. But it's not necessarily looked at as an important job, right, by society. But that person's calling could be somebody who is deeply of service. So it's not just the janitor who sweeps the halls, wipes down the door handles, cleans up the vomit. They also have spare clothes in their janitor's closet. They have power bars put aside for the kids who didn't get lunch. They're the one who sees the kid who with a broken heart in the hallway and gives them a listening ear. I've had that person. They were like, that's me. That's me. You use that example all the time. I'm the example. And I was like, oh my God, thank you for that. We want things to be a certain way because we were trained to believe that's the way things are supposed to be, instead of self-determining. So the 3-hour workshop, I'm going to explain how the energy works in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses, because they're interconnected. I just provoked an aha for somebody. I'm sure they went, oh, that's what that is. So that's exciting. We already got quite a few people signing up. If you're a community member, in fact, Astrology crew, you already have your priority savings, and magazine subscribers have their special savings as well. So make sure you check those posts. I'll put it out again. Trying to make it accessible to people. And then March 29th, I'm doing a fun one. My daughter said, Mom, you need to do more fun stuff. We're doing the astrology of gardening, and I made a really cool cover for it, for the little booklet. So it's $20. Okay. We're going to talk about the history of astrology and gardening, because it's one of the oldest ways people used astrology. And we're going to have a little booklet on, when to plant, when to work the soil, when to weed, when to fertilize, in different spaces, how to use the moon phases, and then what plants do better when, okay? Which is kind of fun. I was an avid gardener for 17 years. And then my business grew and I didn't have time. I've grown things. Some of you will remember when I was teaching how to garden inside an apartment, because we are in climate change. We do have private equity in charge of most of the food supply, and we know they have the morals of, I would say, a sea slug, but I like sea slugs. They're cool. But the morals of, a manure compost heap. How's that? So you want to be able to grow at least leafy greens, okay? Make your salads or microgreens. You want to be able to have some stuff on hand. You're never going to be able to do your whole caloric intake needs, but having a little bit can save a lot. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing that for super fun. So we've already got people signing up for it because I've only talked about it in the community, but I thought I'd let you know you may or may not be a patron. It'd be a worthwhile and fun class. I think we need fun. I do. When things are serious, we need a little levity. It can't always be so serious. But anyway, there's that. Let's welcome our newest members. We've got Dora, Sarah, and I know it's Sarah because it was like Sarah, Bobara, and I'm like, oh, we used to make fun of my Sarah that way, or tease her. Mero, Brittany, Lisette, Scarlett, Amethyst, Lindsay, Asena, Nicole, Venusian Blind, Jay Renee, Carol, Chelsea, Larak, Amelia, SSS 333, Amma Barbie, Christina, Jamie, Samantha, Jennifer, Sarah, Mel, April, Chocolate Chip, Elizabeth, Candace, Beth, Heather, Raquel, Denise, Stephanie, Jay, Faye, Jamie, Ray, Karen, Nicole, MW, Nona, Cassie, Lainey, Nia, Laura, Aaron, Jay, Rachel, Ava, Rita, Kat, Sivan. And then big shout outs to our astrology crew. We've been going through the aspects in the natal chart once a month. I'm kind of doing it on a whim, but we're March 21st. March 21st, Astrology Crew is meeting up, and we're looking at aspects to and from Mars in the natal chart. All right. Aspects to and from Mars in the natal chart. We did Venus, we've done Mercury, we've done the moon, we've done the sun. So now we're moving on to Mars. We have the astrology class library, which is invaluable information. You can look at the astrology crew as a space for people to dive into that intermediate level, more nuanced level astrology. It's not beginning astrology, but if you wanted access to like really solid, nuanced interpretation, that's what I'm giving because I'm a specialist in interpretation. I think people haven't done enough of that. And it's hard to write. Like, it's hard to write. That's why I'm giving these lectures. We'll get the transcripts done, and eventually there'll be a book. You know, that's going to be the easiest way to do that. Because when you're sitting and writing, you use a little different part of the brain, or at least I do. But anyway, it's a wild world. We've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up in March. So, and as always, I will do the deep dives for our magazine tier and up. And wild. It's a wild month. All right, let's listen to the speaking of astrology crews, let's listen to the woke astrologers talking about what happens in consultations. What happens? What do we see? And how do we help people?
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
What do clients like that just meet you and come in for a reading for the first time? What surprises them?
I think detail surprises them. When we can see into the surroundings of their life, into because we can most of the time, if somebody wants to ask about a current relationship, whether that's with a sister or a mom or anything, because those are real life things that people are like,
Yep.
you know, we don't need those other people's charts. We can see them
Right.
in your chart, and that's really the most ethical way
And your perception of
to
that
do that.
relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think they're surprised at the detail, timing, and we always get the expectation that we're going to tell them everything that's because of how those videos do on social media. So those get
Right.
the most algorithm catches, whether that's people. I mean, it's some of it is like I've gone beyond pop astrology and started to call it rage bait astrology.
Right.
Because there's
Seriously.
no better way to pad your comments. There's no better way to get engagement
Right.
than they feel very supported, encouraged. But yeah, I think they brace for, you know, sometimes we hear, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
And because they're bracing for, as for what they see on social media, for us to tell them why their life is so terrible because they are broken in some way because they have a terrible chart. And you're just never going to get, you know, as a girl whose chart is full of challenges and like really strong Pluto placement and really strong Mars placement, I kind of love those. I've grown to love them and grow into them and appreciate them. So I don't think there's good or bad placements. I just think that how we use that. They're all tools.
You guys wouldn't be reading under me if you believed in good and bad placements,
Right.
because progressive evolutionary astrology is about helping people understand their strengths, understanding that the challenges that appear in a chart are also the pathway to healing. That's why you're here, is your deep stance on ethics and people's growth.
It takes somebody discerning to see the vision of a story, or in this particular case, of a chart, and see where it can go. Like when we're doing like anytime I'm doing a natal reading, like if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, just to explain my process, I like to do a natal reading with them because I want to show them who they are, building the foundations of who they are, showing where they shine, where they're strong. And then, you know, if they've got some concerns about what's coming up, like maybe they're making a move or they're changing jobs, but we can go through the energy and they have that confidence because I've shown them all of their strengths, all of their capabilities, all of their incredible potential. And they go, right, I have that. And I'm like, yes, you do. And we fill their sails up and we point them in the direction of the prevailing winds to help them. So yeah, that's what it is. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's true to the name that you are awakened to what your chart is capable of, and you get an idea of what's up on the horizon. We're not here to fearmonger you. We're not here to limit you and tell you that you must be put in this specific box because of your placements. We help you move through the energy with what tools you already have in your toolkit, which is your chart.
Right.
So we offer a lot of nuance. We offer that room for empathy, and we always provide that hope for people that there's always that room to grow. And even if there are periods where there are really tough transits, you can still get through them. And we can show you that potential, and we can show you that actually you can get through this. You do have that power within you, and you've always had it in you this entire time.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to dovetail on what you said, Shelby, oftentimes those challenging transits are where you experience your greatest growth.
Sure.
And to show you
1000%.
who you are becoming. So yeah, it's crunchy, absolutely. We're not gonna sugarcoat that, but it will make you become more actualized. So yeah.
Evolutionary.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important to maybe highlight that those challenges will come, whether we're looking at your chart or not.
Right.
But the fact that we're looking at the chart helps cultivate how you can, like, because let's just, I'm going to say for myself, I'm going to be honest. There is a choice to resist and say, la, 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 that's not that's not happening right now to me,
Right.
which is a very real human nature trauma response, depending.
Absolutely.
And so knowing that it's coming up, it helps you feel a little less sucker punched, because we all
Oh my God.
hands up if you feel sucker punched by 2026 already, right?
Yeah,
Right.
both
But
hands
having-
up. Like,
we see your Mercury, we see the condition, we understand how you will best receive information, how you will best be encouraged to fully hear and not be like, I can't hear this, I don't want to hear this. When you're dealing with an astrologer, that astrologer sees your chart in a way that helps us to communicate to you in the best way possible so that you can receive, because there is free will involved, and you can choose to be like, I'm not going to get through this, I'm not going to, right? But if you're sitting with somebody who not only can see some future transits, but also, this is the surprising part, will understand you from your chart in ways that people who have been in your life, who can't see you for who you are because of who they are and their trauma blocks, not because anybody's a bad person, just because sometimes there's just impasses of communication
Yep.
or whatnot,
Differences
or
of
everybody's
perception.
everybody's perception is also their survival kit, and so they realize that, and that moment comes at very different times for different people. And so being able to see your chart and speak to you in a way so that your defenses aren't up, so that possibly you'll consider not saying la la la, I can't see that. That is why you have the consult. That is why you hire an ethical, good astrologer. Is not just like, obviously we can't make the thing not happen. Life
No.
is going to happen, but
And to dovetail on what you were saying, Susie, we see all of you, and we hold space for all of that, the everything that is you, so that you can see it and shine on that, and so that you are like giving yourself to breathe and expand into that space. So
it's also worth mentioning, like, the flexibility of it all. Like, you're not fixed into a solution. Like, there are different ways you could tackle an obstacle. So it doesn't mean like, oh, you need to do the same thing you were always doing, especially when you start looking at like progress charts and you see the changes in that. You're like, actually, you got to start doing things a little bit differently now. Or like take on maybe what was once a bold approach becomes a more strategic one, etc.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when it came to my attention, and this is where my neurospiciness may show up, but because I feel like it's an attack upon my very, very special interest. However, when it came to my attention that there are people who claim to be astrologers out there who charge comparatively to what we do at Woke Astrology, and all they do is read out people's placements.
good God.
I couldn't
No.
imagine doing that, first of all, and claiming the mantle of astrologer.
No.
I would rage.
Yeah, that's not what we do.
Punching through the computer
or without
to that person.
Right. And so we don't even do that like in a natal reading. It's not an astrology lesson. I think that's really important to understand. We have classes for that. When you're looking at somebody's natal chart or you're doing a timing consultation, first of all, how much prep work goes into it?
Good God.
Quite a bit. Especially, like, I have similar ways of doing natal and consultation because I want to get the layout of the whole chart. I'm like, how does this person function? But stuff like transits, I'm like, okay, did they have a Saturn return? Did they have a Uranus opposition? Are they old enough for a progress chart? It's kind of like, you know, at the gas station, they have the little calendar that's like, you can't give this person cigarettes until this date. It's like, you can't give this person a progress chart until after this date.
Yeah.
That's a
Kind
great
of a
analogy.
deal. So it's like, okay, 1981 and after, you're going to be hitting that like progress chart territory. I know, it's crazy. It's now hitting millennial territory.
Yep.
I think the hungry, passionate astrologers that are on this team were we're never kind of not prepping. We're never not taking
Right.
everything in. We can't look at anything without feeling like, oh, this person presents like a Gemini, or they look like this rising, or so. But for each person's chart, yeah, for sure, we take the time before.
I'm always looking at the transits immediately, going like, I have that in my head of like, what time are they looking out to? What major transits are occurring then? Which house are those transits happening in? And then it starts to turn into the story of them as I go through the work. And it's, I don't know, it's like a mystery box. I love it. It's a story.
It's so cool.
And yeah, right. And you have a
Like, I think I told this story before, but I had a client be nervous because they thought I was going to roast them. And then it kind of makes you think, man, what astrologers are out there that they're just like looking at a chart professionally and they're like, oh, let's roast this person. Let's get all the things we can pick at and make fun of. We're here to show you your potential. We're here to show you what you're capable of. And while the chart shows an arc of what an instinctual reaction is going to be versus getting to that deliberate, it's important to be able to know what you want to share with the client to help them feel empowered. You're not there to belittle them. And that's never going to happen here.
No.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
Wowza, wowza, wowza. Aren't they great? I've missed doing that. We all missed doing that. It was so good to get back together after months and months and months, all of us together. We could have done it with one or two people gone or what have you. We didn't want to. We wanted to have the whole crew together. And so that was really nice. It was really fun. It's always good to sit and chat together about our favorite thing, our special interest, astrology. So there's a couple of things I want to end us on, and I will end on the total lunar eclipse. And again, there will be an article at the Awake Space, and I'll link it into the show notes. So with the full visibility map to explain. So I'll end the podcast on how to use that energy. I've already gone through it with magazine subscribers, and so you'll find out more. So let's talk about Uranus for a minute, though. I know. Go ahead and laugh. You can chuckle. It's all right. The Mars-Uranus action. I decided, because I kept seeing these videos by people who talk about astrology online. And they were like, we haven't seen a conjunction. That's an actual conjunction between Mars and Uranus, in this long. And part of that I understand they're talking about in Gemini, except Mars conjuncts Uranus multiple times during Uranus's transit through a sign, because Uranus spends 7 years in a sign. Mars visits a sign every 2 years. So there's no way, it is impossible for Mars not to meet up with Uranus, the planet. Now, early degrees might be different. Later degrees might be different. What degrees it's meeting in. And I'm not a fan of degree theory. I don't think every degree has its own meaning. I really don't. I'm just not a fan of that philosophy. I think people don't want to spend the time thinking about the energy of the planets involved, the transit through the sign, what it means for the energy to be expressing in the different levels energy expresses in a spectrum. And so we want quick and easy answers, right? And so it's really easy to make false correlations, okay? However, the last time Mars was conjunct Uranus, in the first 10 degrees, the first decan or decan, it's actually decan, it's not decan, but in the first 10 degrees of the sign, and you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. January 20th, 21. We had the Mars square Uranus transit the day Iran was attacked, and I set most of my predictions for Pacific time because I'm a West Coastie. So it was the 28th everywhere else, but it was still, we have time zones. We have time zones. So, and I figured that would be when it would happen, Coming up in July, we have Mars conjunct Uranus on the 3rd/4th of July. And I know a lot of people are saying, Civil War, it's a civil war. I'm not convinced it's a civil war like the 1800s. We're not going to see a replay of that. But we could see, we're going to definitely see restructuring of government, and we're going to see different factions playing out. I'm not convinced it'll probably be shocking because Uranus is involved, but it'll be like communications, it'll be information, it could be sharp and stabby. It could be vehicular violence, anything. If you look at the things Gemini rules, but we could also have some very inspired speeches. We could have some very inspired written work. We could have very inspired spoken word. There can be some really good stuff that comes out of it too. Remember, on the same day, and I like to describe this. So imagine you're at an airport or a train station or a bus station or a grocery store, okay, a public space. And everybody is experiencing the same shared reality of the building, the sounds to some degree, the air currents, whether it's hot or cold, the temperatures, and some people are going to feel that differently too, but there's a certain shared reality. So everybody's at LAX that you're sharing, okay? One person may be leaving forever. They may be having to go back home because a parent is sick. Another person may be moving too. One's ending a period of life and the other is beginning a period of life in that moment. You could have people ready to kill each other and are preparing for a divorce. And you could have two people meet and bump into each other and spill coffee on themselves and fall in love. Okay. You could have grandparents showing up to see grandbabies they haven't seen in years. You could have someone going no contact. You could have people gearing up for a legal battle, and you could have people gearing up for a wedding. You could have somebody who's just neutrally like, just a day they're traveling. It's neither special nor bad or devastating. It could just be a day. You could be somebody who's working at the airport and that's just what they do and they see it all. But it could be somebody working at the airport who just has everything go wrong. Like the printer fails and they drop coffee on their keyboard, or they got yelled at 65 million times, like more so than normal, that kind of thing. So I'm using all of these examples because, yeah, we have warlike actions happening. It may end up being a declared war. People still fall in love. The sun still rises and sets. People build businesses. People's businesses close. People meet and fall in love, and people decide to isolate. People get a new library card and they're excited, and somebody decides to throw out all their books, different person. I can't imagine that with the Venus and Gemini, but I'm sure it happens. As we go through life, that's just our perceptions. That's not deliberate. That's just people have different days. It depends on what's the moon doing in your chart. What's the solar transit? Where does Mars sit in your chart by transit? I'm not talking about your natal chart. I'm talking about the transits to your natal chart. It can be the best of times, it can be the worst of times, and it can be both at the same time. It can. It really can. I have a very, well, actually there's 2 years that I can think of in my life where it was like diametrically opposed. What was bad was beyond traumatizing. Like it was so bad. And the good was so good. It felt like living Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Everything was juxtaposed. It was like really bad, really good. One of those years was 1985, and the other year for me was 1999 because it was scary. I didn't know how I was going to do what I needed to do for my family because I brought the kids to the States. I had no money. And I came back with $50. Literally, like no exaggeration. And it was one of the most magical years of my life. I was already an astrologer. I already had studied metaphysics and comparative religion. And then the deep, good stuff started showing up. It was a wild time. It doesn't have to be all good. It doesn't have to be all bad. Okay. It just is. So as we move to the end of the podcast, let's talk about that total lunar eclipse. And we'll go through using that energy on a personal level, because on a mundane level, that total lunar eclipse is systems change. It's massive systems change. The order of things is changing. I think we'll also see some volcanic action. Now, we could see that in eastern Russia, down into Japan, down into the South Pacific, or in the Pacific itself. I think it's the total lunar eclipse is visible in New Zealand. I've got my eye on New Zealand hard. Do be ready for either just really bad storms or erosion events with, bluffs and hillsides, or volcanic action, even seismic activity. Because I think seismic activity will be associated with volcanic action with this. So that's the mundane. On an individual level, there may be things that go away. There may be things that go away. But that, full moons are releases. So a lunar eclipse, especially a total lunar eclipse, is a full moon on steroids. So releasing. So how can you use this consciously? If you've been working on your healing process, this allows you to release that which does not serve you anymore. It's a great time to cut cords. If that's something you do, it is a great time to write things out and burn it safely. I like to melt it in water for a full moon more than burning, because it can erode, and burning is great symbolically and it's a great catharsis. However, it's very sharp energy. We already are in the year of the fire horse, and it's yang fire. And I'm not a Batsi practitioner. I'm not a Mang astrologer. I'm not an Asian philosophy astrologer, but I understand enough of it that's like big. And so you already have a lot. Water erodes, and we have a lot of Pisces energy right now. So I would get a bowl of water. I would write out the things I'm releasing, and I would let it dissolve in the water. So you want to use thin, non-waxed paper so it dissolves. And if you don't have that, that's okay. You could take a ritual bath using Epsom salts, especially with your favorite, smells. I like my Dr. Teals. I do. I have an arnica and menthol one that is just amazing for sore muscles. It's a good time to really release the habits that are holding you back, whether it's negative thinking, eating patterns, etc. It doesn't have to be negative. It kicks off a new cycle. One cycle ends, another cycle begins. Taking it deliberately, even if it feels rotten, what's going on, and I'm not saying it is going to be rotten, but let's say it does. I've been thinking a lot as I'm over the last 30 years almost. I have been thinking about like why what I wanted to do, why that didn't work out. Because if you would have asked my 19-year-old self how I felt about being an astrologer, I would be like, shut up. Do not ever accuse me of being a wacko weirdo. I was logic driven. I wanted to work in intelligence for the United States. I was told I was overqualified when I was 21. And it's true. Oh my God. If you're a patron, you know the story. I ended up working in the private sector. I did corporate espionage. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't like I was stealing company secrets, but I was gathering information and then analyzing political stability in regions on whether there should be investments there. Yeah. So I went private sector because the public sector told me I was overqualified. Jesus. And I was like, what the hell? I'm so good. And now looking at how the world is playing out, I can see very much why. And knowing myself and my absolute refusal to bend any analysis to the will or whim of anyone so-called above me. Well, that's probably why. That's probably why. If this was the reality and the outcome of this particular plane of existence we live in, that's probably why. And I can be of more service to people using those analytical skills and that intuition to help them grow. This total lunar eclipse has a narrow, like the blood moon part, it's a very narrow window. It goes from Eastern Russia down through Asia into Western or Eastern Australia. I don't know. Melbourne, Andy, Melbourne, not Melbourne, Melbourne, Sydney, New Zealand. Outside of that window, it's still an eclipse, but it's not the blood moon. And I get annoyed with the monikers of things. Blood moon. We're going to scare you with a blood moon. The moon turns red. It's optical physics. Nobody has a paintbrush and demons aren't coming out of the sky. I think we really need to let go of, like, if we could do that with this Virgo full moon, this would be great, okay? We need to let go of the superstition. Human beings do not require angels and devils to behave well or behave disgustingly. We are very capable of that. I learned by the time I was a little kid, the monsters I needed to be afraid of were human. And I've done a lot of energy work. I've been part of many interesting energy processes, including exorcisms. Okay. I'm going to say vibing vibes with the frequency. So if somebody's already a little, they're just going to vibe harder there. Manifesting has nothing to do with being good. We reveal to ourselves that which we have been creating every single day. That's why I have created methods and methodologies for people to learn how to be deliberate in a way that works for them instead of against them. I know I can't change the world. I learned that a long time ago. But if I can help you change your world, I have done my job. Be open to what's next. Yes, the world is shifting. It doesn't mean you can't have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year, a great life, regardless of what happened to you early on. Regardless of what happened to you early on. I'm living proof. And it's not because I'm special. It's because I'm human. Humans have brains that are capable of doing amazing things. And as much as trauma changes brain chemistry and impacts development, guess what? Healing impacts your brain chemistry. It does. And you might have an event that changes your world forever. But just because it's changed doesn't mean it can't be good. As I watched videos of the place I came of age getting bombed, knowing the neighborhoods, knowing the buildings, having just visited 2 years ago, having friends, extended family, because we still claim each other, even though my kid's dad and I got a divorce. We loved each other till the end. It was never about love. Things flashed in my head. Memories. Arriving there and smelling the air, and the air being so different than what I was accustomed to being from Oregon. The feel of the wind on my skin being hot and dry, but still some humidity into play because it's an island. The smell of the souk with the spices intermingling and the aroma being almost overpowering to someone raised in a culture that sanitizes everything, or has artificial smells. But imagine the burlap bags of turmeric and paprika, cinnamon, cardamom, saffron. Amazing. The spice markets. Walking past the perfumeries with the amazing aroma of myrrh and frankincense, oud, listening to a different cadence in the music. They've reclaimed a lot of land and extended things out compared to when I lived there in the 90s. But one of my favorite things to do, because my 5 planets in Gemini child would wake up after 4 hours of sleep for many years, by the way. And we'd be up right around the first prayer in the day and the call to prayer with 5 mosques around me and the beautiful cadence calling people in. I'd put him in the car, put him in his car seat, and we'd drive just before sunrise down to, there's a shopping mall there now, but it was the shoreline. And the old fishermen, skinny and wizened, toothless, sitting at their fire, eating their breakfast, playing drums, getting ready to go. And the drums mirrored the movement of the tides. And I would hold my baby boy and say, your great-grandpa was a fisherman. I used to go out on the boat with him. And let me tell you, the North Pacific, they always just say, you don't understand the sea. And I'd be like, no, you have a bathtub. I grew up on the North Pacific. Oh, the northeastern Pacific. The Oregon coast is wild and, those are my memories of Bahrain. Going to get street food because, my God, the street food is so good. One thing is called tikka, and it's not like tikka masala like you're thinking from India. It's the most amazing grilled meat you've ever had in your life. It made with dried lime. Oh, God, it's good. You eat that with a really flat bread. The khubaz is really flat, not like pita bread. Pita bread has a lot more density to it. This is big, flat bread. And they'd put it in with the grilled tomatoes, grilled onions, and they'd put it in this packet that they would fold with the khubaz. You'd eat it with really good yogurt. It was so good. That was the first thing everybody asked me, like, what do you want to eat? When I got to Bahrain, I'm like, tikka. one of my daughter's cousins was like, oh, auntie, you always love that. You know, nothing's changed. As I look at what's happening, it is emotional. I understood myself as a woman in that culture. It was the only place I was paid parity unless I worked for myself. It was the only place I was viewed by my competency. I did not live as an expat. I was married into the culture. I had no desire to hang out with expats. I went there for a reason. I wanted to understand the culture and the history, just like I would anywhere I traveled to, because I knew there was something more, that human beings have a depth and breadth of expression. There are going to be a lot of people giving a lot of rhetoric and a lot of propaganda out in the world about different countries and their traditions and their cultures. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. When you hear somebody speak with their whole chest, understand that Mercury is retrograde right now, and it is going to spill the beans and spill the details between now and March 20th when it goes direct. But then the propaganda is going to get a little weird once it switches back direct, but not until it's out of the shadow period. Ask yourself, what does this person have to gain by convincing you of this information? What's in it for them? There is this, and I'm not going to mention names, there's this guy who's former CIA who gives you this really wide-eyed look and this really earnest tone. And a good part of what he says is true, enough to make the untrue parts or the manipulative parts effective. Most people don't understand how to see that. He's not outright lying, because the best lies have a lot of truth to them and then insert falsehood. But I can tell you, from having lived in 23 countries, 4 continents, and I worked in the private sector, seriously, because again, I was overqualified. Oh God, I'm kind of glad at this point. I was frustrated for many years, but what I've learned in living in 23 countries, 4 continents, is everyday people want their families to be safe. They want enough food on the table. They all believe there is a relative in their family that makes the best potato salad, mechbous, biryani, spaghetti, lasagna, bread, cakes, cookie, whatever it is. There's always somebody in your family who does it better than everybody else. Don't tell me about your family's recipe. My auntie does it the best. My mama does it the best. Everybody just wants a place that feels safe to live and raise their family. Everybody has a different kind of ambition. Some people want a life where they can take a lot of naps. A lot of, people want to make a good amount of money. Other people just want a balance. Some people want to build empires. And an empire, I'm not talking about the bajillionaires. I'm talking about the person who puts in like 5 corner grocers, in a city, and they're like, I made it. You could be in the smallest village in the developing world, and there will be somebody who is famous for something that everybody edifies them, and it could even be they fear them a little bit. That's our 10th house. Fame comes in so many ways. People are people. Whether we're smart or stupid, whether we are of sound body or we have physical challenges. There are those who use their will and their grit and those who need more support. We are human, and we humans live in a small rock. It's a small rock in a vast universe, and we have more in common than we do different. Every single one of us can do horrendous things, and every single one of us can rise to the occasion and be a hero on one particular day. We can, and we do. The outer world is going to be really shaky this week. And as I told the members of Laurie's Test Lab, which are the Astrology crew and what used to be the Mystery School tier, that do the ANI process, where you get clarity first, and then alignment into aligned action. It's action planning, getting out of the head and into action. I just recorded a video for them saying, now is the perfect time to practice the work and to be deliberate. I can't think of a better time. I hope you and your families are safe. If they're not, I hope they find it soon. And if you've lost people, whether they're in the military or they're civilians, because again, we have listeners from around the world, I pray that you find comfort and soothing in whatever faith you possess. And your faith might be a little shaken right now. It's okay. Don't judge yourself for that, because the universe isn't judging you. Not one time. And for those believing in a deity, if a God is omnipotent, omnificent, why would it ever judge you for having a moment of doubt? Because if it knows all, sees all, is all, then it knows you're not. You're human. Why would there be judgment? I believe human beings wrangle those understandings to control people. And I believe in a universe, a God, a goddess, the all that is, that understands we are spiritual beings, spiritualizing matter. As Dr. Wayne Dyer said, spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritualizing matter. We are spiritualizing matter. We are spiritualizing matter. And I know sometimes it's hard to walk in the density of our reality. It is. But that also helps us strive for beauty, strive for the magic, strive for our faith and our connection. May you find comfort. May you find value in yourself. May you find vitality to move through the world and be of purpose. And may you find peace within, because we can't wait on the world to have peace, to cultivate it within ourselves. That comes first. Until we cultivate peace within, we can't see peace without. Have a beautiful week, my friends.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.